Before we begin this breathtaking journey through one of the most heartwarming and redemptive stories in all of Scripture, take a moment to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and prepare to be drawn into a tale of famine, loss, loyalty, and a love story written not just in romance, but in redemption. The story of Ruth is not just a story for the hopeless, the grieving, or the lost. It is a story for anyone who has ever felt forgotten, who has ever needed a fresh start, and who dares to believe that even in the ruins, something beautiful can grow. So get ready, because this is not a fairy tale. It is better. It is the true, divine love story of Ruth. And it all begins in the days when the judges ruled Israel, a time when everyone did what was right in their own eyes. A lawless land of chaos and rebellion, and during those dark and unpredictable days, a famine swept through the land of Bethlehem in Judah. And there was a man named Elimelech who decided to take his wife Naomi and their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and leave their home in Bethlehem, the house of bread, which had no bread, and journey eastward to the land of Moab, a place considered pagan and foreign by Israelite standards, a land whose origins were clouded in scandal, for Moab was the son of Lot by his own daughter, and yet desperation drives people to strange places, and Elimelech did what many do when hunger and fear ruled the day. He fled, seeking provision in foreign soil. They arrived in Moab and began to build a new life, and for a time it seemed that their move had brought stability. But tragedy struck like thunder, and Elimelech died, leaving Naomi a widow in a strange land with only her two sons, who in time married Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. And for 10 years they lived in Moab, trying to piece together a life. But joy never fully bloomed, because after a decade of barrenness and sorrow, both Mahlon and Chilion died as well, leaving Naomi with not just one grave to mourn, but 3, her husband and her 2 sons. And she was left with nothing but 2 foreign daughters-in-law and a broken heart, heavy with grief. And so Naomi, whose name meant pleasant, was now a hollow shadow of herself, empty and bitter. And she heard that the famine had ended in Bethlehem, that the Lord had visited his people and given them food again, and she rose to return to her homeland, not because she had anything to go back to, but because grief can only sit still for so long before it longs for familiar ground, and she began the journey home, with Orpah and Ruth walking by her side. But as they walked, Naomi stopped and turned to the young women and said, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you find rest, each of you, in the house of a husband." And she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept, clinging to her with love and grief. They both protested, saying, "No, we will go with you to your people." But Naomi, seeing the weight of what lay ahead, pushed again, saying, "Turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Do I still have sons in my womb, that they may become your husbands? Turn back, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I were to say I have hope, even if I had a husband tonight and bore sons, would you wait for them to grow up? Would you remain unmarried? No, my daughters, it is exceedingly bitter for me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." And again they wept, torn between love and logic. And Orpah, with tears and a kiss, turned back to Moab, returning to her people and her gods, fading from the story, while Ruth, standing firm with fire in her heart, clung to Naomi with unwavering devotion. And Naomi said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after her." But Ruth spoke words that would echo through eternity, words of fierce loyalty and love, saying, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go I will go, and where you lodge I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she said no more, and together they walked the dusty road toward Bethlehem, two widows clinging to each other, bound not by blood but by love, one bitter and silent, the other resolute and full of hope. And when they entered Bethlehem, the town stirred. For the women said, "Is this Naomi?" But Naomi, worn by grief and time, replied, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" And so they returned to Bethlehem, Naomi and Ruth the Moabitess, at the beginning of the barley harvest. And while Naomi mourned, Ruth moved, because hope is a thing that works even in ashes. And Ruth said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field, and glean among the ears of grain, after him in whose sight I may find favor." And Naomi said, "Go, my daughter." And so Ruth went out and gleaned in the fields behind the reapers, picking up what was left behind, as was allowed by the law of Moses for the poor and the foreigner. And as it turned out, though nothing in God's story ever truly happens by accident, she came to the field belonging to Boaz, who was a relative of Elimelech, a man of standing and kindness. And Boaz came from Bethlehem and greeted the reapers, saying, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." And Boaz noticed Ruth, a woman working with quiet strength, and asked the foreman, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant replied, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers.' She has been here from early morning until now, except for a short rest." And Boaz, moved by what he heard and what he saw, approached Ruth and said, "Listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn." And Ruth, overwhelmed by such grace, fell on her face and bowed to the ground, saying, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" And Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law, since the death of your husband, has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land, and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge."
And as the day wore on, Boaz invited her to eat at his table, to dip her bread in the wine vinegar, and she ate until she was satisfied and had some left over. And when she rose to glean again, Boaz instructed his men to let her glean even among the sheaves, and not to reproach her, and to pull out bundles for her and leave them for her to gather. And so Ruth gleaned until evening, and then she beat out what she had gathered, about an ephah of barley, a generous amount. And she took it up and went into the city and showed her mother-in-law what she had gleaned. And she gave Naomi what food she had saved from her meal. And Naomi, astonished, said, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." And Ruth told her it was in the field of Boaz. And Naomi's heart stirred with hope for the first time in a long time. And she said, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." And she told Ruth, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth continued to glean in Boaz's field through the end of the barley and wheat harvests. And she lived with her mother-in-law. And as the seasons changed and the harvests were gathered, a new kind of harvest, one of promise, was quietly ripening. And so the harvests came to a close. The fields grew quiet, and the air began to change. But inside Naomi's heart, something had begun to bloom again, a faint light in the cave of sorrow. And with a heart once bitter now beating with strategy and concern, she turned to Ruth and said, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" For Naomi knew that Ruth could not live forever gleaning grain from others' fields, and that the law of their people provided a way for widows to be redeemed, to be protected, to be given a future through what was known as a kinsman redeemer, a close male relative who could marry the widow and restore the family line. And Naomi had not forgotten Boaz, the man whose field Ruth had worked in, whose kindness had gone beyond mere charity. And she said to Ruth, "Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you have been working? Behold, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking.
But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." And Ruth, loyal and courageous, said, "All that you say, I will do." Not because she was manipulating, but because she trusted Naomi. And Naomi trusted the God who was writing something none of them could see yet. And so Ruth prepared herself and went down to the threshing floor, where the harvesters worked late into the night, beating grain from husks, stacking it, eating their meals, and sleeping nearby to guard the bounty. And Boaz, after eating and drinking and feeling content from a day's labor, lay down at the far end of the grain pile and fell asleep. And Ruth approached softly, like a whisper on the wind, uncovered his feet, and lay down. At midnight, Boaz stirred, and was startled to find a woman lying at his feet. And he said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer." And in that simple, profound act, Ruth proposed a future, not through flirtation, but through covenant, appealing to the law of redemption and the kindness of the man who had shown grace when no one else had. And Boaz, a man of both righteousness and affection, replied, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have made this last kindness greater than the first, in that you have not gone after young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you ask. For all my fellow townsmen know that you are a worthy woman. And now it is true that I am a redeemer, yet there is a redeemer nearer than I. Remain tonight, and in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, let him do it. But if he is not willing, then, as the Lord lives, I will redeem you." And with those words a promise was made in the hush of night. And Ruth lay at his feet until morning, then rose before anyone could recognize her and returned to Naomi. Before she left, Boaz filled her shawl with 6 measures of barley and sent her back not empty-handed, but with provision. And when Ruth returned to Naomi and told her all that had happened, Naomi's eyes gleamed, and she said, "Wait, my daughter, until you learn how the matter turns out. For the man will not rest, but will settle the matter today." And true to her words, Boaz went straight to the gate of the town where business was conducted, and he sat down and waited. And behold, the nearer redeemer, the one who had the first legal right to marry Ruth and redeem the land, came by. And Boaz called to him, "Turn aside, friend, sit down here." And the man came and sat down. And Boaz gathered 10 elders of the city as witnesses, and said to the man, "Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, is selling the parcel of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. If you will redeem it, do so. But if not, tell me, for I am next after you." And the man replied, "I will redeem it." But Boaz added, "The day you buy the field from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance." And with that condition the man's heart changed, and he said, "I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I impair my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself, for I cannot redeem it." And to confirm the transaction, he took off his sandal and gave it to Boaz, and all the elders and witnesses saw it. And Boaz declared, "You are witnesses this day that I have bought from the hand of Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech, and to Chilion, and to Mahlon. Also Ruth the Moabite, the widow of Mahlon, I have bought to be my wife, to perpetuate the name of the dead in his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brothers, and from the gate of his native place. You are witnesses this day." And the elders replied, "We are witnesses. May the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel." And so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. And Naomi, the once bitter woman who believed God had emptied her, now held a child in her arms, not her own by blood, but by blessing. And the women of the town said, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a redeemer, and may his name be renowned in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of life, and a nourisher of your old age." And Naomi held that baby, her arms once empty, now full. And they named the child Obed, and he grew and became the father of Jesse, who became the father of David. And so Ruth the Moabite, the outsider, the foreigner, the widow, the gleaner, became the great-grandmother of King David. And through her line, generations later, came Jesus, the Christ, the Redeemer of all mankind, the one who would spread his wings over every Ruth, every Naomi, every lost and broken heart, offering redemption not by obligation, but by love, not by law, but by grace. And the story of Ruth became not just a record of ancient faithfulness, but a prophetic picture of the gospel itself, of a God who steps into our famine, sees our loyalty, receives our devotion, and redeems our story from beginning to end. And this is why Ruth's story matters so much. Not only because it is beautiful, not only because it ends in love and legacy, but because it proves that no one is too far, too foreign, too broken, or too late to be written into the divine plan. And that when we choose loyalty over comfort, faith over fear, and kindness over convenience, God writes miracles into our lineage. And that is the end of Ruth's story, but it is not the end of yours.